Welcome back, guys. So now we're going to start getting into uh, data frames. So we covered NumPy, we covered Panda series. Data frame is where you will typically do most of your work, okay, and you will typically be dealing with data frames for the rest of the course, okay, wherever you're collecting data, analyzing data, and all those things, right? So the first thing we're going to do is import pandas as PD, okay. And we can create a data frame from a file, okay, by reading a CSV file, okay, and most of the data sets you're going to deal with are going to be in this form, okay. It's basically an output of someone who collected data, and you'll be able to download it from wherever you are able to access data, okay. The CSV file has to be in the same folder as this IPython notebook, okay. And this is where it is in this case. So we're going to read it as df, okay. So we're going to read the file and store it in this, assign it to a variable called df, okay. And let's see what this is, okay. So it's a very small data set. It has around 30 rows, okay. But even this small data set, so look at the amount of effort. So I got this data set from a June 2018 issue of Kiplinger's Personal Finance, okay. And you can see that even this small data set, as long as it doesn't matter as to whether the data is big or small, you want to be able to answer the questions you have, right? And based on the questions you have, you will go out seek that right kind of data, right? And this data set is basically a compilation of data from multiple sources, like 5 different sources here, right? Census, Pew Research Center, this community and economic research, and all those things, right? And what this data set is about is what it takes to be middle class in 2018, okay. And you can see that it has a collection of cities spread across, spanning this country from different states. And it has the two ends of the household income. Lower end would be folks who are more in the public service domain, for example, a teacher, or I'm not sure about a firefighter, but yeah, you can sort of categorize them into this bucket. Household income on the higher end would be someone who is in, say, who's a doctor, who is in engineering, or who's a businessman, or someone like that, right? And then, of course, there is this median home price in a city. Median is the center point, okay, and it's there are 50% of them are below, 50% of them are above this point, this home price point, okay. For example, and you know, San Francisco is notorious for that. It's $750,000 median home price. That means that's a midpoint. There are much higher price points on that, on the home price front, and some lower points. Some lower end, okay. And there is cost of living index, which is basically a collection of goods and services you typically would pay for, and housing is a component. And you can see a pretty strong correlation between the home price and the cost of living index, and that makes sense, right? Because a lot of the cost you will incur is going to be borne out of the fact that you need to pay rent or mortgage of X amount, right? And it shows up in that cost of living index. Cost of living index is basically derived out of an average across the country. So 100 is the average. Let's assume 100 is the average. So 269.3 means to be able to live in San Francisco as opposed to an average city, it costs 2.69 or 269, 2.69 times more than the average city, okay. And there are some lower end, so that means it costs, it's this El Paso, okay, let's take El Paso, and there is Phoenix. Let's see, where is Phoenix? Okay, there is Phoenix. Phoenix is less than the average, and so on, right? And I think it's not, and I keep scratching my head as to, you know, if I were a city planner, I would never want real estate to ever be expensive in a city, because what it takes away is it takes away capital, okay, money away from productive activities like creating a business or launching a startup, which is sort of creating a business, or whatever endeavor you have, instead of locking it into a dead investment like real estate. Okay, so real estate is technically dead. Not only does it degrade the quality of life for average folks, but it also disincentivizes people to take risks. Okay, so for example, if it takes you $750,000 or $1 million to buy a home, you need to go look for a certain kind of work so that they pay you enough, and most of that cost is not borne by you and me. If you're living in that city, it's borne by the employers, and the employers are basically trying to sort of justify your expense, and it sort of disincentivizes them to create jobs as well, right? So fortunately, the San Francisco Bay Area is creating a decent amount of jobs, but I think at some point it's going to come back and bite the city pretty hard, and it makes sense, because if I am an engineer coming out of a school, right? If I am an engineer and if I want to create this next product or a service, right? I need people, right? And I need capital, right? So if most of my capital I raise, let's say I go to an investor and say, hey, I have this neat idea, and you have the money. I have this neat idea. I need to raise $5 million to sort of start this business, or $1 million to start this business, right? A lot of that $1 million of money I raise is not going to be spent on creating a better product or providing a better service. Most of that money is going to be spent paying employees enough so that they can afford to live in a very expensive city like San Francisco. Okay, so I think it sort of doesn't make economic sense for a city to be in a situation where the cost of living is so high. Okay, and long term it's eventually going to come back and hurt these high cost areas. Okay, which makes economic sense because at some point this people will not be able to afford. And the other thing is that I want, so let's say I'm watching this development on the self-driving or autonomous driving car front very actively. Okay, and you need density of people, you need density of talent to convert an idea into a product or service, right? And if the talent gets scattered away because of the cost of living, and which is sort of happening, unfortunately. Okay, and you can see, I just pulled up the San Francisco Chronicle article. By the way, you can insert links like this in Jupyter Notebook, right? So this is, I'm saying that this is what I want to highlight, and there is a hyperlink. Okay, and you can insert link, and I can sort of link, so I can link through that and I can point to that resource. Okay, so this is another benefit of working in this notebook type of environment. But as you can see that most of these people, there is a net migration out of California and other high tax regions in this country. They are all moving to lower tax states, like lower cost states like Texas, for example, right? I think they say Texas. Yes, it's no accident that Texas, one of the states to which California is losing the most residents. Okay, which makes and this is unfortunate, because if a self-driving car would have taken, say, a decade to become fully functional and on the road, now it will take say 15 years or maybe 2 decades because of the scattering of talent. Okay, which is the sad part. Okay, but that's the reality. I cannot change it. I don't have the power to change it, but I'm just, that's my 2 cents. Okay, so now moving on. Okay, so we have the data. Okay, so we have this data. So let's try to get a sense of what this data has. Okay, or what type of data it has. Okay, so it has some integer, some float, and it sort of makes sense. So these are integer types and this is float type, and these 2 columns are objects. Objects are basically strings. Okay, so whenever you read in a data set which has columns, which has strings, okay, they will come in as objects. Okay, and you can I'm just going to go through this, and we will actually do a lot more of that later. But let's say I want to extract the first value, okay, which is Seattle. Okay, and I will say 0, which is the first row, and sorry, city column. Okay, so that's Seattle. Okay, and I want to find out what type it is. Okay, and you will see that it is type string. Okay, so this is type string. Okay, and so on. Then info. So these are some summary functions. Okay, so info tells you as to what this is the data frame. Okay, it has this many rows, so this is the range of index. Okay, it has this many columns. Okay, so range index, this is like 30 entries, as I said, 0 to 29, this many columns, and there are 30, so there are no non-null objects. Okay, so basically every column is filled with real values. Okay, that will not be reality in the stuff you will deal with most of the time. In real world data, you will get a lot of not like null objects, like not a number type of objects, and you have to sort of think about how to clean that up, and that's where you will likely spend a lot of your time if you're dealing with a lot of data. Okay, describe gives you a quick summary of what, especially it only takes summary of integer and floats. Okay, it doesn't deal with strings. Okay, and it gives you a summary of what the count of each column is, and this count is going to change. So if there was a null object somewhere, okay, and I'll show you that. Okay, so there is mean, standard deviation. It gives you this pretty neat summary of there is a median. Okay, this is the 50% mark of this thing. So this is the low end, this is the high end, and there is the 50% mark, and you're going to be doing that more and more. Okay, so I'm just going to show you one thing. Okay, where let's say we assign oh yeah, so this is just showing you what a median is. So I'm just creating a new series. Okay, describe. Okay, what did I do? PD to data frame. Okay, I didn't import numpy. Okay, numpy. Data frame object has no attribute describe. Okay, oops. Okay, so this is the same thing it's doing. I'm just creating a series first. Okay, let me just take this out. So I'm creating a series, okay, with called numbers. Okay, and I'm creating a data frame out of it, and this is another way to create a data frame. You will not be doing this more often, but this is you create a dictionary, you create a series, and then you assign it to a column, you assign it to a dictionary. Okay, and then you call this PD.data frame, and it creates this data frame. Okay, and say you want to, so this midpoint is 5. Okay, and you will see that when you do median, okay, describe again, same problem. Okay, you will see the midpoint is 5. Okay, so that's median. 2.5 is the 25th percentile, 7.5 is the 75th percentile, and this is the max and this is the mean. Okay, so let's see what happens when one of them is a null. Okay, so I'm going to purposely go in and say at location 5 of the index 5 in the median home price column, assign a null value. Okay, which is np.nan. Okay, and you will see the data frame. Where is the location 5? 0, 1, 2. No, this is index 5. Okay, so you see this 5 null. So lock. Okay, we'll go through lock and iLock later, but in this same series of lecture. But you see that now one of them is a null value. Okay, and this is what you would get when you read a data set where one of the numbers is not a null or not a number. Okay, and now when you do the info, okay, you will see that one of the columns has only 29 non-null objects because one of them is a null object. And when you see the description of that, you will see that the median home price column, the count is only 29. So it sort of does not calculate that number. And a lot of these numbers also change because one of them, so for example, if the mean is definitely going to change because it's going to be a mean of 29 numbers instead of 30 numbers. Standard deviation is going to change. I don't know about that, but the median could change and all those things. So that's a bit on reading data frames, doing some basic summary statistics, and so on. Okay.